I live within skateboarding distance of some pretty world-changing companies. Did you know that we have factory farms here in Silicon Valley for meat that look like breweries? And I think they're going to have dramatic impact on our world like Apple and Google have. Okay, so that was a bold claim. I sound like one of those Silicon Valley tech bros some people love to hate. But let's go visit a factory farm and see if I can persuade you. Before we go, I should explain the three main types of alternative proteins, as they're sometimes called, that are made around here. The Good Food Institute calls them plant-based, cultured, and fermented. Really? Are consumers going to get that? By plant-based, they mean veggie burgers, faux chicken nuggets, and sausages that imitate the taste, texture, and look of meat. Impossible Foods factory is just up the road, and they are the hot new thing, having raised $2 billion and serving a market that grew 45% last year. Every time I turn around, they have a new announcement, like this week's with Doghouse, the hot dog chain that's sweeping the nation. Eesh, I cringe when I hear the phrase doghouse, because I have a way of getting myself in the doghouse with my wonderful, patient wife.
Honey, I know we have an agreement that you have an unlimited budget for photography gear, but you've exceeded it.
So what's cultured meat? Consumers know it as lab-grown. It sounds like mind-blowing science fiction, and it looks like a beer brewery. A few live animal cells are placed in a bioreactor. It's a scary-sounding name, but it really just means a stainless vat filled with a fluid that cells like to grow in, and out comes meat. So why would anyone do this? Well, Paul Shapiro wrote a best-selling book about it in 2018 to explain the rationale. The Good Food Institute originally called it clean meat, but they got pushback from the food companies who thought it implied their meat wasn't clean. Long story, whatever, but the term cultured meat makes it sound to me like they've taken meat and made a product like yogurt from it. Ew. It is meat, but it's free of contaminants. Clean.
Salmonella sickens and kills more of us than any other foodborne pathogen.
About 1 in 4 pieces of raw chicken carry salmonella.
The strains of salmonella that are showing up on these chickens are tougher, stronger, and many of them are antibiotic resistant.
But why would Paul Shapiro, a devoted vegan since 1993, be advocating lab-grown meat? In his book, he points out the world has a massive meat tooth that isn't going away despite all the efforts by health, environmental, and animal rights advocates. It takes innovation. Clean meat can satisfy the world's craving for meat without all the downsides like salmonella.
Turns out that right about the same time that Abraham Lincoln was saving the Union, Abraham Gesner was saving the whales. Was Gesner a crusading environmentalist? No. He was a Canadian geologist who had patented and was just in the process of commercializing kerosene, offering a cleaner, more efficient way to light our homes. In fact, kerosene was such a superior alternative to whale oil that within 30 years of Gesner's patenting of it, it had decimated America's whaling fleet, shrinking it by 95%, rendering harpoons like this one mere relics.
The meat industry famously promotes laws to prevent anyone from filming their factory farms and sues people like Oprah who say negative things about them. But the clean meat companies place their facilities in trendy areas to show them off. So I'm in this retail space where you wouldn't expect to see a factory farm. And right around the corner from our factory farm is a fitness center. You can turn your body into the sexiest outfit you've ever had. But here in this big old building, surrounded by high-rise apartments, is Upside Foods. I got a pretty wide-angle lens so you can't get too close here, but you can see behind that glass are their huge bioreactors to produce a lot of stuff. So this is pretty noisy in the shopping center where Upside Foods is located, but we'll see if this can work. In 1931, Winston Churchill wrote, "We shall escape the absurdity of growing a whole chicken in order to eat the breast or wing by growing these parts separately under a suitable medium." Well, that is exactly what Upside Foods is doing for all the public to see. So if that's cultured, what the heck is fermented? Well, to me it sounds like sauerkraut, which is sour. Actually, it's the one I'm most excited about. It's Mycelium. Okay. That didn't clear anything up.
Mushrooms are the fruiting bodies of fungi. So the mushroom is like the apple. The bulk of the organism is growing underground, and it's composed of these long threads. And these threads grow one cell at a time, and then they branch and rebranch, growing in every direction they can, even three-dimensionally. And that mass of threads is called a mycelium.
Just to give you an idea of how much fungi are in the forest, as you're walking through, there's about 300 miles of fungi under every footstep that you take, and that's all over the world.
Here is where the magic happens. During the mushroom's mycelial stage, unique compounds not found in the mushroom fruit body are produced. More compounds are created during the mycelium stage than the other phases of the mushroom life cycle.
Impossible burgers are hyper-processed foods, and the health data on red meat is pretty grim, despite what meat lobbyists like Nina Teicholz promote. Like the two others, Mycelium is a hot space, attracting capital and talent, like clean meat author Paul Shapiro. So we're a little outside of the Silicon Valley now. We came to West Sacramento, kind of an industrial setting, and there's the Better Meat Company.
Welcome! How are you doing?
Hey Paul, how are you?
Nice to meet you, Chris.
Good.
Hi.
Hi there, Tony.
Tony, so
You'll
nice
remember
to meet
that
you.
name, huh?
You know, Chris, you and I have a lot in common.
Do we?
We do.
Because your wife.
My wife is named Tony.
Yeah, we love her cookbooks. I listen
very
to her
cool.
podcast. So is that the harpoon from your TEDx talk?
It's very kind of you, Chris. I'm impressed by your research, and yes, it is. You are standing in the home of the largest mycelium biomass fermentation facility anywhere in North America. And it used to be a bounce castle for children. So you know the inflatable bounce houses that they make?
They made them here?
No, kids came here to bounce. So that's why these floors look like this.
Oh,
that's
wow.
why the walls are all painted like that.
Oh, wow.
And so we liked it and we didn't change it.
Wow.
So this used to be a facility where children came to have fun, and now it's a facility that is creating a better future for those children. Awesome. After I give you guys a tour, you're going to come in here, and Hunter is going to give you guys some samples, and you'll get to try some actual mycelium. All right, so come on in here. Catherine, will you mind telling Chris and Tony what you do at the Better Meat Co?
Sure. So I work as a process development engineer here. So I work here in the lab, working with our bench scale fermentations and with some of the smaller fermenters. So what I have here, this is some slurry that came from a previous 9,000 liter harvest that we did last week. So we've saved it, and this is kind of the form that it comes out of the fermenter before it goes through our downstream processing. So I can show you here with just this filter cloth, kind of how it looks like once it is dewatered, and show you the kind of the texture. So if we pour that out, it's a very thick harvest. Yeah, if you cut it, it's kind of like applesauce kind of texture.
Yeah.
Just squeeze it out. And then once it's pressed, you can start to kind of see the meat-like texture. So here, when you tear it apart, you can see these fibers. Yeah, you get that meat-like, chicken-like consistency.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. Thank you very much, Catherine. Now, to get plants to look like anything like this, you have to do a lot to them. You have to isolate them and fractionate them and extrude them. Whereas what we are doing is, instead of doing fractionation and extrusion, what we're doing is fermentation and harnessing the power of fermentation to create meat-like foods that are naturally meat-like in their texture, but also very high in protein. So this is a whole food that is higher in protein than eggs, higher in iron than beef, higher in fiber than oats, higher in potassium than bananas, and is a complete protein. It has all of the essential amino acids that humans need in order to survive. And so this is a real superfood that can not only reduce humanity's footprint on the planet, that can not only reduce our footprint on animals and improve animal welfare, but can also improve public health.
I'll interrupt the tour briefly to mention that there's another good book by the journalist Larissa Zimberoff, Technically Food, Inside Silicon Valley's Mission to Change What We Eat. She points out that mycelium has a protein digestibility score of 0.99, which beats beef at 0.92. An egg scores 1.0, but chicken scores 0.95. It's also high in polyphenols, which have an antioxidant effect. And this is what it looks like when it's dried?
Yep. You can see that here. So this is pure mycelium in a dry, shelf-stable state. We'll show you up here. This is a mural that shows the evolution of meat consumption by humanity. So starting out 10,000 years ago when we were hunter-gatherers, hunting bison, obviously by the 1800s, both the hunter-gatherers and the bison had been removed from the land, and instead we had cowboys and cattle. coming up to like the 1950s, where factory farming was beginning to take hold and animals started being confined more, to the present day, where chickens are confined in factories where they're wing to wing by the tens of thousands, to the future, where we will have a fermentation-fueled future, where humanity can satiate its meat tooth without having to raise and slaughter animals. And so the animals are back on the land, and we're producing all of the meat that humanity desires without the need to raise and slaughter animals. Think about it like this. We are running a fermentation where, in the same way that a cow eats grass and converts that grass into a steak, our little microscopic fungi consume nutrients like corn, and they convert it into something that ultimately looks like a steak. The difference is that a cow takes more than a year of feeding her before she's slaughtered, whereas our little microscopic fungi are finished with their fermentation in less than 1 single day. A key to making that happen is that we want to make sure our microscopic fungi are the only organism in the fermenter. And so just in the same way, if you were running, let's say, a chicken farm and you don't want turkeys or pigs or raccoons competing for the food in that farm that or the chickens would be eating, we don't want bacteria or yeast or other organisms competing with our microorganism. And so we sterilize everything that goes into the fermenter. And that's what this equipment is here for, to essentially ensure that we are having a clean, sterile fermentation that provides a wonderful home inside of the fermenter for our little microscopic fungi to do their magic. From the moment we inoculate our fermenter to the moment we harvest is less than 1 single day. When that process is done, we take all of that mycoprotein and we bring it into a room where we squeeze the moisture out of it and then we chop it up. That's really the processing that occurs in order to get our succulent, delicious rhizome mycoprotein into a form that our customers can then utilize. So we like to offer our product in a dry, shelf-stable form. And so that means that we put it through a dryer where it will come on to as a wet mycelium and come out of this dryer as a dry, shelf-stable ingredient that a user can hydrate and put into an animal-free meat.
Well, the first thing I had that was mycelium-based was last night.
You had corn?
I did.
Yeah.
I went to the store and I bought the corn.
Which product did you get?
It's the vegan one. It doesn't have the egg binders.
Yeah.
And it's a spicy chicken patty.
I love that one. Yeah,
yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's really good.
And you know, when I heard you were doing mycelium, I have to admit, I thought, you know, corn has been doing this for 25 years and it really hasn't gone very far.
That's right. Well,
and Pulse, I know you. They had an $831 million acquisition by the Philippine company, and I did see some good news. There was a story just run by The Independent in the UK saying everybody's worried that Greg's vegan sausages are having supply chain problems. And they're based on corn.
They are, yes.
And it's like, wow, that's pretty popular.
It is, but yeah, also I'll put it like this. Saying mycelium or mycoprotein is like saying plant protein. Like there's lots of species of plants. There's pea, wheat, soy, chickpea, fava, whatever. And the same is so when it comes to the fungi kingdom. And so corn uses one species of fungi, and there's thousands of others out there, and we're using a different one. And so in the same way that, let's say, Beyond is using pea protein, whereas Impossible is using soy protein, you know, corn is using one species of fungi, and we're using another. And we think there's real benefits to what we're doing, but our hat's off to corn. So why don't you try this out? Enjoy some mycelium sausages here, along with Just Egg.
I can't remember when the last time I ever had a sausage was. So, sausage, me, I haven't had a sausage in, I don't know, 30 years. Here it goes. And it's only my second day I've ever had mycoprotein. The first was yesterday. But it's good, as far as sausage goes. I don't happen to like sausage that much, but...
I never eat sausage. I've never liked it my whole life, so we'll see. It's good.
Pretty good, yeah.
It is really good.
All right.
You know, the texture is just like sausage.
All right, so if you look in here, you can see that this really does a good job of mimicking what an animal-based sausage would look like. And then when you bite into it,
Has a good bite. It's firm. Tastes delicious.
Yeah.
This is a complete protein. More protein than eggs, more iron than beef. Who wouldn't want to eat this? But help yourself. We got Hunter made a whole thing for you, so.
I would eat those.
I'll split the eggs with you.
Just eggs. Ah, there, that's what I was wondering. Made from plants.
So, do you get a little hung up in the fungi thing?
I don't. Other people do. So, if you go to a restaurant and they say, hey, we have a plant-based sandwich and it's made from a portobello, you don't think it's false advertising.
Right.
You don't think, oh, that's not a plant, that's fungus.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks that.
Yeah.
And so I think to the general public, it's all just plant-based.
Yeah.
That's very tasty.
Well, that's the cool part about the way that the industry is going right now. There are so many plant-based products now that you can, it's a whole ecosystem at this point. The idea is that there are so many different plant-based products that you can have a whole breakfast, you can have a whole meal, heck, you can have an entire set of meals that are completely plant-based and in some cases not even tell the difference.
And the fiber in it has like beta-glucans, like oats do?
Fungi, by their very nature, do have beta-glucans. It depends on the species. Some have more, some have less. It's a slightly different format than oats, but yes, it is still classified as beta-glucans.
Rice, soy, pea, and wheat.
Okay. Right now, 99% of the animal-free meats out there are made from pea, wheat, or soy, or some combination of those three. So you're going to get
isolates.
Yeah, these are isolates and they're extruded. So that means that they've taken, for example, in the pea case, let's say you grow a field of peas, harvest the field of peas, mill it into a flour, separate out the fiber, separate out the fat, so you have a pea protein powder, and then you subject that pea protein powder to an extrusion process, which changes the structure of the protein to go from being globular to being stringy. And so that is what you get with a pea protein extrudate. And that's what is the hero ingredient in products, let's say, like a Beyond Burger or other types of plant-based meat. And that's great. I love those products. They're great. But taste the difference between plant protein isolates that have been extruded and rhizo. Okay, so let's go. Here you go, Tony. You're going to be our test subject here. So hydrate that with your saliva and tell me, does that have a meat-like texture to you at all? You're shaking your head. Not really.
Mm-mm.
All right, so try some pea protein. Tell me, does that have a meat-like texture to you? Negative. Take some soy protein.
It tastes like straw.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's like eating straw.
Yes. So that's some soy protein extruded. Again, it's gonna be kind of like Rice Krispies maybe. So this is rhizomycoprotein. And so hydrate that with your saliva and start chewing it. And tell us, do you notice any difference in how meat-like it is?
It's like it magically becomes meat in my mouth. It's amazing. It's like I'm eating a piece of hamburger sausage or something in my mouth as I just chew it.
Yes, exactly. And that is the magic of growing our mycelium via fermentation.
What's the food in Indonesia, the fermented food?
In Indonesia, there's a commonly eaten product that's called oncom. Which is
I couldn't remember the name.
It's related to tempeh, except it's generally made with peanuts instead of with soybeans.
I see.
But it has been widely consumed and enjoyed for centuries in Indonesia.
Is it a similar species to what you're using? Or?
It's actually the same species.
Same species. Boston Consulting made predictions about the growth of alternate proteins, and they too broke them into three categories: plant-based, cultured, and fermented. They think it all depends on alt proteins reaching parity with traditional meat on taste, texture, price, and convenience. They predict plant-based will get there in 2023, fermented like Mycelium will get there in 2025, and cultured won't get there until 2032. And if those things happen, alt proteins could be as much as 20% of the meat market by 2035. Oh, speaking as a former Earth scientist, that's not fast enough. But speaking as a Silicon Valley techie, I've seen technological change happen faster than anyone imagined. So I had a few more questions for Paul. So you're not the only one in this space. It seems like there's quite a few companies that are beginning to use mycoproteins. One in the UK, what are they called? Enough? They already did their Series B, and they're building a big plant, and it's next to Cargill, and they're going to feed them the starch to ferment and all that kind of stuff. Is this like a rising tide lifts all boats, let 1,000 flowers bloom, or how do you think about it?
I do think about it that way. So I think Enough is a great company. I'm rooting for their success, and I admire what they're building. But it's going to take a lot of companies to solve the problem that we are seeking to solve. The meat industry raises tens of billions of animals every single year. And if we're going to make a dent in that number, and we're going to reduce humanity's footprint on the planet, it's going to take lots of oars in the water, but it's all one boat. Yes, of course, to prevent animal cruelty, but to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to prevent deforestation and wildlife extinction, and pandemic risk, antibiotic resistance, and more. And so I am a big fan of all of the companies in this space because what we're trying to do is hard, and it's going to take a lot of us to succeed. So if you think about how the animal protection movement was started in the United States, really in the 1860s and 70s, you had advocates who were very concerned about how horses were being brutalized to transport us and our goods all around the nation's cities. And they crusaded for all types of reforms. They wanted watering stations, they wanted resting hours, they wanted Sabbath days for the horses or they couldn't be worked at all. And then Henry Ford did more to liberate horses than the animal advocates were even trying to accomplish for them by rendering their exploitation obsolete. Similarly, if you think about how we used to write for centuries, it was with quill pens. We live plucked geese for their feathers in order to write. In fact, Thomas Jefferson was such a prolific letter writer, he had his own flock of geese who were live plucked just for him to have a constant source of quills. We didn't stop torturing geese for writing because anybody cared about geese. We stopped because metal fountain pens were invented. And the list goes on and on and on. It's not just horses and whales and geese who were liberated by technological innovation. That list keeps on going on and on. It's very difficult, though, to think of any types of animal exploitation that ended because of concern about the animals. Trust me, I wish people would do the right thing for the right reason. I'm vegan. I've been vegan since 1993. I think it's a great thing to do, and I'd be pleased for more people to do it. The reality is, though, that meat consumption is going up, not down. Per person meat consumption is going up, not down, including in the United States. We have to do something, and part of what we're going to need to do is to give people the meat that they want, but divorce it from animal slaughter.
Preach it, brother.
Yes.
Thanks so much. It feels so weird to be an hour and a half's drive inland from San Francisco and have these big tanker ships behind us. We're only a half a mile from the Better Meat Coast, so maybe one day they'll be filling up those tanker ships with clean meat.
This is just too good to be true. Well, it is chicken. That's
I know the taste of chicken is like the best chicken
I've had. I know. Well, it's just nice eating chicken that wasn't alive and clucking.
Yeah, and didn't live in a battery farm.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is, you wouldn't even know.